Commander Zafira sat in her chair on the bridge of the Cosmic Harmony, staring at the screens in front of her. Something was wrong. Very wrong. The readings from Sector 7G showed nothing but empty space where there should be busy space traffic. "Run, the scan again," she told her crew member, a tall crystal being from the Vectar race. His body flickered with nervous light as he worked the controls. "Same result, Commander. Complete silence across 12 light years. No ships talking to each other, no trade signals, no emergency beacons, nothing." Zafira felt her stomach drop. In her 20 years of deep space work, she had never seen anything like this. Space was never truly quiet. There were always ships, moving goods between planets, always emergency signals from broken-down vessels, always the background noise of 1,000 different species living and working among the stars. But Sector 7G was dead silent. "What about natural signals?" she asked. "Star radiation? Planet magnetic fields?" The crystal officer checked his instruments again. His light patterns showed confusion and fear. "Even those are dampened, Commander. It's like something is absorbing all energy in that area." The bridge crew exchanged worried looks. The furry Nebulans whispered to each other in their native tongue. The robot representatives from the Cognition Collective made worried beeping sounds. Even the calm Altarians like Zafira felt their confidence shaking. "Send an emergency message to the Galactic Council," Zafira ordered. "Priority Alpha. We need every available ship and scientist here immediately." Her communications officer, a green-skinned Yorthak, worked quickly at his station. "Message sent, Commander. Council response incoming." The reply came faster than expected. The Council was taking this seriously. Within 6 hours, ships began arriving from across the galaxy. Military vessels, science ships, exploration craft, all converging on the edge of the mysterious Silent Zone. Admiral Corvin arrived first in his massive Vectar battleship Crystal Spear. His ship was beautiful, made of living crystal that could bend light and energy. Behind him came Captain Voss in the Nebulan research vessel Wind Dancer, followed by 3 ships from the Mechanical Cognition Collective. Soon, 12 ships from 8 different species floated at the edge of Sector 7G, all their sensors pointed toward the silent darkness ahead. "Status report." Admiral Corvin's voice crackled over the communication system. Zafira pulled up her data. "The Silent Zone is perfectly spherical, Admiral. 12 light years across. We've tried every type of scan we have. Long-range sensors, quantum probes, subspace detection. Everything comes back empty." "What about historical records?" asked Dr. Min from the collective. His robot voice was calm but curious. "What was in that sector before?" The fleet's data officers worked together, combining their species records. What they found made everyone more nervous. "Trade routes," reported the Yorthak data specialist. 3 major shipping lanes passed through that area, plus 2 mining colonies, a research station, and a diplomatic waypoint. All gone. "Gone how?" Admiral Corvin asked. "No distress signals, no evacuation records, no debris fields. They just stopped existing in our records about 50 standard years ago." Captain Voss of the Nebulans floated closer in his gas-filled ship. "My people have stories about that area. Old warnings passed down through our merchant families. They say ships that went in there never came out." "Superstition," Admiral Corvin said, but his crystal form flickered with uncertainty. "Maybe," Captain Voss replied. "But my grandfather's trading company lost 3 ships in that sector, right before it went silent." Dr. Min processed this information with mechanical precision. "Pattern suggests deliberate action rather than natural phenomenon. No known natural force can create such complete energy dampening across this distance." Zafira felt a chill run through her. "You think someone did this on purpose?" "The evidence points that way," Dr. Min confirmed. "But who has such technology? And why use it to create a dead zone in space?" The fleet hung at the edge of the silent sector for hours, scanning and debating. Every test they ran came back the same. Complete electromagnetic silence ahead. No radio waves, no energy signatures, no signs of life or technology. Finally, Admiral Corvin made the decision everyone was dreading. "We go in," he announced. "Full fleet, Maximum caution. Whatever created this silence, we need to understand it. The safety of the entire galaxy might depend on it. As the 12 ships moved forward into the dark zone, their instruments began failing one by one. Communication became difficult, then nearly impossible. Energy readings dropped to almost nothing. But they pressed on, driven by duty and desperate curiosity. Behind them, the normal universe continued its busy existence. Ahead lay only silence and mystery. None of them suspected they were about to discover something that would change how every species in the galaxy thought about warfare, technology, and the quiet race called humanity that lived on the outer edge of civilized space. The 12 ships moved slowly into the silent zone like fish swimming into dark water. Commander Zafira watched her instrument panels with growing worry. One by one, the lights on her control systems began to dim. Power levels dropping, her engineer reported. The crystal being's body was flickering less brightly than before. Main engines at 60% and falling. Similar reports came from all the ships. Captain Voss's gas-filled vessel Winddancer was having the worst problems. His voice came through the comm system, weak and broken. Cannot maintain atmospheric pressure. Systems failing. Admiral Corvin's massive crystal battleship was doing better, but even his ship's beautiful light patterns were growing dim. All vessels, reduced to minimum power. Save energy for life support only. The robot ships from the Cognition Collective went completely dark for 30 minutes. When they finally restarted, Dr. Min's mechanical voice sounded different, slower and more basic. Primary processors offline, running on backup systems only. This field affects all organized energy. Zephyra looked at her navigation screen. They had only traveled 2 light years into the zone, but it felt like they were crossing into another universe. The stars looked different here, dimmer, as if something was stealing their light before it could reach the ships. "Commander," her sensor officer called out. "I'm picking up something ahead. Large structures." Everyone on the bridge moved to look at the main screen. What they saw made them all step back in shock. Massive, dark shapes floated in the space around. A dead star system. They were clearly built by someone, but the design was unlike anything in the galactic database. The structures were huge, some as big as small moons, and they formed strange geometric patterns around the lifeless planets. "The void," whispered Zephyra. "What are those things?" The shapes were angular and sharp, like giant dark crystals or metal thorns. They absorbed light instead of reflecting it, making them hard to see clearly. But their size and the way they were arranged showed clear intelligence behind their construction. "They're not natural," reported the sensor officer. "Artificial materials. But the composition is unknown. Our scanners can't penetrate their surface." Admiral Corvin's voice came through the weak comm system. "Fleet, maintain formation. Approach with extreme caution." As they got closer, more details became visible. The structures were connected by thin bridges or cables that stretched across millions of kilometers. They formed a vast network around not just one star system, but several. Dead planets hung like dark pearls in this web of unknown technology. "How many star systems?" Zephyra asked. Her navigation officer worked quietly for several minutes before answering. "At least 15, Commander, maybe more. The structures extend as far as our sensors can reach." Captain Voss managed to get his ship's system stable enough to speak clearly. "My people's old stories mentioned something like this. They called it the Web of Silence. But we thought it was just spacer legend. Legends usually have some truth in them," Dr. Min said with his slow, backup-powered voice. "Question is, who built this and why?" The fleet moved deeper into the network of dark structures. Some of the ships had to use their emergency thrusters to avoid colliding with the massive constructions. The bridges between structures were thin but incredibly long, stretching across space like the work of some giant spider. "Commander," the sensor officer said suddenly, "I'm detecting something different. One structure ahead is showing different readings." Zephyra looked at the screen. Among all the dark, dead constructions, one smaller structure was giving off faint energy signatures. It was different from the others. Smaller, more functional looking, and definitely active. "Life support readings?" she asked. "Positive. Atmosphere, artificial gravity, power generation. Someone's alive in there. The news spread quickly through the fleet. After hours of flying through this graveyard of unknown technology, they had found signs of life. Admiral Corvin made the decision. All ships, set course for the active structure. We need answers. As they approached, the active structure became clearer. It was still large, maybe 50 kilometers long, but it had a different design than the dark web around it. This one looked more practical, with docking bays and communication arrays. It's a station, Zafira realized. Someone's been living here, watching over all this. The station's docking bay opened automatically as they approached. A voice came through their communication system, speaking in perfect galactic standard, but with an accent none of them recognized. Welcome, travelers. We've been expecting visitors eventually. Please dock your ship safely. I'll meet you in the main bay. The voice was calm, friendly even. But something about it made Zafira's skin crawl. Who could live alone in this place of dark silence? And why had they been expecting visitors? Admiral, she called to Corvin. I don't like this. It could be a trap. Maybe, Corvin replied, but we need answers. And whoever's in there might be our only chance to understand what happened here. The 12 ships slowly entered the docking bay. As the bay doors closed behind them, Zafira felt like they were being swallowed by something vast and hungry. Outside, the dark web of structures waited in silence, keeping their secrets. The docking bay was clean and well lit, a strange contrast to the dark structures outside. As the alien delegation stepped off their ships, they saw a single human figure walking toward them. He was average height with black hair and wearing a simple gray uniform. His name tag read, Dr. Min-Ho Park. Welcome to Research Station Omega, he said with a slight bow. I am the station keeper. Thank you for coming. Admiral Corvin's crystal body flickered nervously. Station keeper? How long have you been here alone? 47 years, 8 months, 12 days. Min-Ho replied without hesitation. Since the end of the Zerathi conflict. The name hit the alien visitors like a physical blow. The Zerathi Empire had been one of the most feared civilizations in this part of the galaxy. They were known for brutal conquest, slavery, and the complete destruction of any species that resisted them. But they had vanished from galactic records decades ago. The Zerathi, whispered Captain Voss. What happened to them? Min-Ho gestured, for them to follow him deeper into the station. Let me show you. It's easier to understand if you see it. They walked through corridors lined with monitors and control panels. The station was clearly designed for long-term habitation by a single person. Everything was organized and efficient, but there was something lonely about it that made the visitors uncomfortable. The Zerathi Empire controlled over 100 star systems, Min-Ho explained as they walked. They had been expanding aggressively for centuries. When they reached human space, we tried to negotiate. He stopped at a large observation window. Outside, they could see one of the dark planets hanging in space. They weren't interested in peace. The Zerathi attacked our outer colonies without warning. 17 human worlds were destroyed in the first week. Over 2 billion people died. Zafira felt her stomach tighten. So you fought back? We tried conventional warfare first, Min-Ho continued. But they outnumbered us 50-1. Their technology was advanced, their military was huge, and they had no mercy for civilians. He pressed a button on the wall. The observation window showed a closer view of the planet below. The alien visitors could see the remains of cities. Dark towers and empty streets stretching across continents. So we developed something new. We called it the Silence Protocol. Dr. Min's robot voice was quiet. What does it do? It disrupts organized energy transmission at the quantum level, Min-Ho explained matter-of-factly. Starship engines stop working. Communication networks collapse. Computer systems shut down. Even complex biological functions become impossible to maintain. The implications slowly sank in. Captain Voss was the first to understand. You shut down their entire civilization? All of it, Min-Ho confirmed. Every ship, every station, every planet. The field affects any system that requires organized energy flow. It took 6 months to ensure complete coverage of Zarathi space. Admiral Corvin's crystal form dimmed with horror. But the people? What happened to the Zarathi themselves? Minho's expression didn't change. The field doesn't kill immediately, but complex nervous systems require organized electrical activity. They had approximately 72 hours after activation before their brains could no longer function. The alien delegation stood in stunned silence. This wasn't warfare as they understood it. This was the systematic elimination of an entire species. How many? Zephyra asked quietly. 43 billion across 117 worlds, Minho replied. Every Zarathi citizen, soldier, and civilian. We made sure none survived to continue their aggressive expansion. The numbers were staggering. The Zarathi had been one of the largest empires in known space. To think that humans had not just defeated them, but completely erased them from existence. Why are you telling us this? Admiral Corvin asked. Minho turned from the window to face them directly. For the first time, his calm expression showed something darker underneath. Because certain members of your galactic community have been making concerning moves recently. The hegemony's territorial expansion toward human space. The Dominion's new military buildup. The Coalition's aggressive trade demands. He gestured toward the dead world outside. This sector serves as a memorial and a reminder. We prefer peaceful solutions to problems, but we're prepared for alternatives. The weight of his words settled over the group like a heavy blanket. They were looking at the corpse of an entire civilization, one that had been eliminated so thoroughly that even the memory of it had faded from galactic records. The silence protocol was our first-generation technology, Minho continued. Developed 47 years ago with primitive human science, our current capabilities are significantly more advanced. Captain Voss felt his gas form shiver. You're threatening us. I'm informing you, Minho corrected. The choice of how to interpret this information is yours, but I suggest you share what you've learned here with your respective governments. Handed Admiral Corvin a small data crystal. Complete historical records of the Zarathi conflict for your council's review. As the alien visitors stared at the crystal, they realized they were holding proof of humanity's capacity for absolute warfare. The quiet species from the Outer Rim didn't just fight wars. They ended entire civilizations so completely that silence was all that remained. Dr. Minho Park led the terrified alien delegation through the station's observation decks. Each window showed a different view of the dead Zarathi worlds below. The visitors pressed their faces against the transparent metal, trying to understand the scope of what they were seeing. This was Zarathi Prime, Minho said, pointing to the largest planet, their capital world, home to 8 billion beings. Through the clear window they could see massive cities stretching across continents, but the cities were dark and lifeless. No lights twinkled in the buildings, no vehicles moved through the streets, everything was frozen in eternal silence. The field hit them during their morning rush hour, Minho explained calmly. You can still see where their transport system stopped working. All those vehicles just stopped. Captain Voss shuddered. His gaseous form rippled with horror. They're still there? After 50 years? The silence protocol preserves everything perfectly, Minho replied. No decay, no decomposition. Time essentially stopped for them when the field activated. Admiral Corvin's crystal body flickered dimly. Show us another world. Minho pressed controls on the wall. The view changed to show a different planet, this one covered in what looked like massive industrial complexes. Zarathi Manufacturing Center. They built their warships here. Over 3 million workers lived in those factory cities. The alien visitors could see the factories clearly. Massive ships half-built in the construction bays. Cranes frozen in mid-lift. Loading docks with cargo containers sitting exactly where they were dropped 50 years ago. When the field hit, everything just stopped, Minho continued. Assembly lines, power plants, life support systems. The workers had maybe an hour before the air recycling failed. Dr. Min's robot voice was barely a whisper. You watched them die? We monitored the entire process, Minho confirmed. It was necessary to ensure the protocol worked as designed. We couldn't risk any survivors rebuilding their military. He changed the view again. This time they saw what had clearly been a military base. Hundreds of Zirathi warships floated motionless in space around a defensive station. Their third fleet, Minho said. They were preparing to attack another human colony when the field reached them. 40,000 soldiers and crew members aboard those ships. The warships looked deadly even in death. They were massive, bristling with weapons, designed for conquest and destruction, but now they drifted like empty shells in the void. What happened to the crews? Zephyra asked, though she feared the answer. Same as everyone else. 72 hours of failing systems, then neural collapse. The ships became tombs. Minho pressed another control. The observation deck's floor became transparent, showing the planet directly below them. The aliens gasped and stepped back from the glass. They were looking down at a Zirathi city from above. But this wasn't just buildings and streets. They could see individual figures in the streets, thousands of them, all frozen in whatever they had been doing when the field hit. Zirathi civilians, Minho explained without emotion, going about their daily lives when the silence protocol activated, shopping, working, playing with their children. The figures below were clearly visible. Some appeared to be running, probably trying to reach shelter when their technology started failing. Others were clustered around what might have been emergency stations. Many were just collapsed in the streets. They look so small, Captain Voss whispered. The Zirathi were actually quite large, Minho corrected. Average height was about 3 meters. But from this distance, yes, they look small. He changed the view one more time. This showed a Zirathi school, a large building surrounded by smaller structures that might have been playgrounds. Educational facility. About 2,000 young Zirathi were in classes when the field activated. The horror of it hit the alien, visitors like a physical blow. This hadn't been a military victory. This had been the systematic murder of an entire species, soldiers, civilians, children, everyone. How could you do this? Admiral Corvin asked, his voice shaking. Minho turned to face them. His expression was still calm, but his eyes held something cold and final. Because they gave us no choice. The Zirathi didn't just wage war, they practiced genocide. Every species they conquered was either enslaved or exterminated. They had destroyed 47 different civilizations over the centuries. He gestured toward the dead worlds outside. When they attacked us, they announced their intention to eliminate humanity completely. They said we were too weak to deserve existence, so we showed them what weakness really looks like. The alien delegation stood in stunned silence. They were looking at the complete extinction of a galactic empire, not just military defeat, but total erasure. The field is still active, Minho continued. These worlds will remain exactly as they are for thousands of years, a perfect memorial to the consequences of threatening humanity. Dr. Min processed this information with mechanical precision. How many other species know about this? None, until now, Minho replied. We kept it classified. But recent events suggest it's time for certain galactic powers to understand what human weakness is actually capable of. As the alien visitors stared at the graveyard of civilizations below them, they realized they were looking at something unprecedented in galactic history. Not just the defeat of an enemy, but the complete removal of an entire species from existence. And the humans had done it so quietly that no one even knew it had happened. The alien delegation gathered in the station's main conference room. There, faces showing shock and fear. Dr. Minho Park sat across from them at a simple metal table, looking completely calm despite the horror he had just shown them. You're probably wondering why I've shared all this with you, Minho said, breaking the uncomfortable silence. Admiral Corvin's crystal form flickered weakly. The thought had occurred to us. Minho reached into his pocket and pulled out a small data crystal, placing it on the table between them. Complete historical records of the Zirathi-human conflict. Battle reports, technical specifications, casualty counts. Everything your governments will need to understand what happened here. Why now? Zephyra asked. Why reveal this after keeping it secret for 50 years? Minho's expression grew serious. Because certain members of your galactic community are making the same mistakes the Zerathi made. Aggressive expansion, military, buildup, threats against human colonies. He activated a holographic display that showed a map of local space. Red areas marked territories that had been expanding rapidly in recent years. The draconian hegemony has been moving toward our outer systems, he said, pointing to one red area. 3 of our mining colonies have reported hegemony warships entering their space without permission. The display shifted to show another region. The Stellar Dominion is building a massive fleet near our trade routes. Intelligence suggests they're planning to demand tribute from human merchant ships. Captain Voss shifted nervously in his environmental suit. Those are economic disputes, not the same as the Zerathi invasion. The Zerathi started with economic pressure too, Minho replied coldly. Trade restrictions, forced taxation, territory, disputes. Then they moved to open warfare. He stood up and walked to the observation window, looking out at the dead Zerathi worlds. We've been monitoring galactic politics carefully since the Zerathi conflict. We know which species are becoming aggressive, which ones are building military forces beyond their defensive needs, which ones are making threatening statements about human weakness. Dr. Min's robot voice was quiet. You're saying you'll do this again? Minho turned back to face them. We're saying we're prepared to do this again. The silence protocol was first-generation technology, developed 50 years ago. Our current capabilities are significantly more advanced. He pressed a control on the wall. The display showed technical readouts that none of the aliens could understand, but the numbers were clearly impressive. Second-generation silence fields can be deployed selectively. We can shut down specific ships, specific cities, even specific individuals while leaving everything else untouched. Third-generation fields can be activated instantly across dozens of star systems simultaneously. The implications were terrifying. The aliens realized they were looking at weapons technology that could end any civilization in the galaxy within hours. Fourth-generation protocols, Minho continued, can create permanent dead zones like this one, but they can also be reversed. We can bring civilizations back online, if they learn to behave. Admiral Corvin found his voice. You're threatening the entire galaxy. No, Minho corrected. We're offering the entire galaxy a choice, the same choice we offered the Zerathi. He walked back to the table and sat down, his manner still perfectly calm. Humanity prefers peaceful solutions. We're traders, explorers, scientists. We want to live quietly on our worlds and be left alone. But we've learned that some species interpret peaceful intentions as weakness. Minho picked up the data crystal and held it up to the light. This contains proof that human weakness is the most dangerous thing in the galaxy. When we feel threatened, we don't just fight back. We solve the problem permanently. Captain Voss's gaseous form rippled with fear. What do you want from us? Take this information back to your governments, Minho said simply. Share it with the Galactic Council. Make sure the aggressive species understand what they're risking. He handed the crystal to Admiral Corvin, who took it with a shaking appendage. The Zerathi thought they were the strongest military force in local space, Minho continued. They had superior numbers, advanced weapons, and a 1,000-year history of successful conquest. Look where that confidence got them. The alien visitors stared at the crystal, realizing they were holding evidence of humanity's capacity for absolute warfare. We don't want another Zerathi situation, Minho said. But if species like the hegemony or the Dominion continue their aggressive expansion, they'll force our hand. And unlike the Zerathi, they can't claim they weren't warned. Zephyra found her voice. How do we know you won't just attack us anyway? Minho smiled for the first time since they'd met him. It was not a reassuring expression. Because you're not threatening us. You came here as explorers and scientists, not conquerors. As long as your species continue to respect human territory and human citizens, you have nothing to fear from us. He stood up, indicating the meeting was over, but spread the word among Your galactic neighbors. The silence in this sector isn't natural, it's human-made, and we can make more silence whenever we choose to. As the alien delegation prepared to leave, Minho offered them one final piece of information. Oh, and tell your governments that this memorial zone is only one of 7 such areas. The Zerathi weren't the only aggressive species we've had to educate over the years. The visiting aliens departed the station carrying with them the terrifying knowledge that the quiet species from the outer rim had been systematically eliminating threats to galactic peace for decades, and no one had even noticed.